Hello and welcome to another End User Talk podcast. I'm your hostess, Jamila, your Lady in Tech. Hello and welcome, Mr. Orlando Jones, to the End User Talk podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join and talk to me today.
Excited to be here.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Same here. You've been making your rounds here lately. You're on the interview circuit, and I'm just glad that I was able to slide in there and get to you before it got too much of a windfall here. But it's great to see that you're active out there. I see all of the different shows or interviews that shows actually that you're getting ready to get involved in, all of the different interviews. And I did not know you were a techie. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
When I was 8 years old, I guess it was 7 years old, I really wanted this new computer that had come out at the time. Radio Shack had a new computer, and you could program it and teach it to do things. And I had to have one of these things. And my dad got me one, and I, started programming BASIC, and then went to MS-DOS and sort of moved down that road. And really, my interest went elsewhere. But I've always been a lover of math and science. And, that sort of is what my journey kind of started out as. And somewhere along the way, I found myself in advertising and, acting and writing and producing and what have you. And I guess that part of my life, people never knew about or it never came up in a conversation. So my interest in tech probably started then, and it never stopped.
Well, that is definitely very good because if people are like me, my first introduction to you would have to be through Drumline. And I'm going to just tell you, I love Drumline, and I love the role you played as the band director.
Yes.
So that was my first real introduction to you. Then later... Right. Later, it became Biker Boys.
Okay. Yes. Very different characters.
Very, very polar opposites. But I did enjoy you in both roles. And I am a fan of, or have been a fan of, It's a Different World. There are several different shows that you were actually had roles in, whether they were cameos or you were a main character. I actually enjoyed everything. And the fact that you're so versatile, that is amazing as well, because we find this day and time, many people become typecast. Can I ask, how have you been able to maintain that versatility in your roles?
I don't think I ever had a choice. And I don't know that I ever thought of it that way. I'm from the Deep South. I was born in Mobile, Alabama. So I grew up in Alabama, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. Drumline was close to my heart because I knew Dr. White. My father coached at Florida State. I was running around over at Florida A&M all the time. I used to grab the drumsticks off the field, and that was where I played there, right? So show-style marching bands were a part of my history, Black Southern heritage. So for me, that's what that movie was. But when I came into Hollywood, it was very different than I think a lot of other people, because I had an advertising agency when I was 18 years old. And that advertising agency and that work is part of what opened the door to Hollywood for me. And I went to Hollywood as a writer. So I was writing on a different world. And I was writing on rock, and I was writing in the, producer on the Sinbad show and all of that madness. So my path was unlike a lot of my counterparts. So it was always weird for a show like Mad TV, when I went to the audition, I saw all these comedians and I knew they were all looking at me like, who is this dude? We've never seen him anywhere. he's not a stand-up. How could he be in this comedy audition for a sketch comedy show? So when I got that job and Quincy Jones gave it to me, they hired me as a writer, but also as a sketch comedy comedic actor performer. Mm-hmm. So I've always done that. I didn't know that you weren't supposed to do drama or comedy or sci-fi I didn't realize that. I thought you were supposed to have to know how to do all of that. I didn't think of it as an asset. I just thought it was the job skill. You know what I mean? It's like playing basketball and you don't know the difference between playing zone, man to man, boxing 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 2 and 1. I mean, right. That's just a part of the game, right? And so for me, that had been my career. And then when things like Drumline and all that, I started to realize that there was whole universes of work that audiences weren't familiar with that I had done. And even with Mr. Nancy in, Sleepy Hollow, people, a lot of people had no idea about Mad TV or Chicago 8 or Biker Boys. Everybody's kind of siloed. You got these science fiction people here, and they're about evolution or time machine. And, it's a very interesting thing. But for me, it's always been about telling. When I saw Billy D. Williams in Star Wars as Lando Calrissian, I had never seen myself in the future before. And it transformed so many things because I hated Star Wars. My mother tried to get me to go. I was like, that's the lamest sounding movie ever. No, I'm not going to see that stupidity. My mother forced me to go. And at the end of it, I wanted a lightsaber so bad. I mean, I needed a lightsaber in my life. But it was seeing Billy D. Williams that really blew my head wide open. But when people talk about representation and diversity, they talk about it like it's some cute idea. But for kid me, that was huge. And so I throughout my career, I'm a fan. So it's hard for me not to see the world through those eyes. And I was a fan of a lot of different things. And I've tried to reflect that in my work by having it both be diverse, but also have it reflect things that I was a fan of. Because I could really sink my teeth into it because, I was a genuine fan of it. And so that's kind of been my focus more than anything else, and bringing completely different characters to life. I just never wanted anybody to look at my work and say, oh, he does the same thing every time. I see it all the time. I wanted people to not know what they were going to get. And, as a performer, as a writer, as a producer, you just don't, I wanted that to be the excitement around watching an artist. I mean, that's what it was like for me. I didn't know what James Baldwin was going to write next, but every time I read something, it blew my head open. And I didn't know what Nina Simone was going to sing next, but I just knew it seemed like every song took me on these journeys and to all these places that the other songs didn't take me to. And I enjoyed taking those trips with those artists. And my dad was a jazz blues fan, so I grew up hearing Sonny Rollins, and that's always been how I've approached my career. And I've watched most of the conversation be about money or fame or who's the most hood or who's the blackest or, a lot of different things that I was like, I don't know how that's relevant, but I mean, if that's the game you want to play with yourself, but that always felt like us just pitting ourselves against each other rather than us trying to represent the many different colors that we are. And that for me was what I wanted to do. I wanted to represent colors that people hadn't seen before.
What you're encompassing, it is the true depth of a writer, a character, or an actor or actress bringing out the life of a character's role or that particular role to be able to be not one-dimensional, but to be able to solidify and bring this role to life so that someone can visualize. So again, I'm like you. I'm not a big Star Wars someone. So Star Wars is not something that would be, and I know I'm going to get a lot of backlash for this, but hear me out.
Listen, you will get no drama from me. I am a firm believer, and people get to be a fan of what they are a fan of. Okay, so you will get no drama from me.
I didn't mean from you particularly, just individuals who are listening. They're like, how can she not understand Star Wars? How can you not be a fan? Well,
please, none of my aunties like Star Wars. All of them are like, what is that mess? Tell that monkey to stop screaming. Why is the monkey screaming? Why is the little robot beeping? Does the beeping mean something? Explain it to me, please. No,
exactly. Exactly. Well, it's more so I just don't understand the concept. It's not something that I could get into. I mean, you have Trekkies, you have people who are into exactly sci-fi, but it's kind of like what you just stated. Until that one character, that one individual came along, that person played that role so well that you became a believer. And then at that point, you gave that show, that series, that movie a chance because that person made the difference. So
that's right. It connected with you. It really is that, right? It inspired somebody. It touched somebody. It made them laugh. It gave them a break from whatever it was that they were dealing with prior to. It's just really about that dopamine rush that comes with the magic of human connection. And so that's always the drive, right? That you want to try and affect people and touch people and hopefully uplift people or inspire people. But you search or you seek the connection.
Exactly. And that's how you get new people to jump on a bandwagon that may have been hitched for years. And that's how the life of a series, the life of a story, whatever it is, that's how it stays alive. And that's why it's built to last, as they say. But with that being said, I look at a lot of the things that you have either written or you've had a role in. And on the writing side, can I ask, do you have a specific of everything that you do? Is one thing more, not necessarily important, but do you enjoy one of your abilities more than the other?
No, honestly, I don't think I really know how to separate them. They're just different tools that you use to do the same job for me. I'll put it to you this way. I did this really silly movie with a buddy of mine named Mike Judge many years ago. Mike created Beavis and Butthead, and he was directing his first movie called Office Space. And he hit me up and he was like, hey, read this movie and just tell me if there's something you want to play. And I was starring in my very first movie at the time. So I was going to have to take something small that I could just get in for a day and get out. And I saw this role about this magazine salesman who turns out to be a unemployed software engineer. But when you meet him, he's got a whole spiel. You knock on the door and he says, good evening, sir. My name is Steve. I come from a rough area. I used to be addicted to crack. And now I'm trying to stay clean. I believe hard work with him to stay clean and make a better life for myself. And that is why I'm selling magazine subscription. I had makeup make my face as dark as humanly possible. Because anybody who does door-to-door salesman in the sun all day is Jaimin Hansu, Wesley Snipes black. You are for real black.
Right.
On your hands, and there's always that split between the color they really are, and you see it on their neck if the shirt isn't buttoned all the way up, right? That coloring detail was important to me because if having seen people do that, it would have completely taken me out of it if I was sitting watching it and I didn't look at that guy's neck and see an entirely different color person. Now, I understand that there are lots of people who that's not important to, but for me, that was critical. And so as a storyteller, I don't know where that starts and ends, right? Sometimes it's musical. Sometimes it's the tone you choose that the characters speak. Is it lower? Is it more nasal? Is it higher? Where does he walk? Where does he lead from? His knees, his head, his chest? Does he lean back? Like how does a person speak? For me, all of those things, whether you handed me the words or I provided the words, the work and the process is still the same. And it still is collaborative in many ways with the set, the location, the director, the other castmates, the DP. I mean, so it's this it's theater, right? You're in you're on stage in the theater, and you've got all this support around you, and it's what you create together that ultimately matters. The same work goes into the good stuff as does the shitty stuff. So it's not like you work less hard when something doesn't come together the way you'd hope. So I don't pull them apart, because it's not just me. It's this group of people and we're all working together to try and get it done. And I believe that there's no I in team. I'm only as good as my ability to work with that group of people. And you'll see that reflected in not just my work but in all of our work. And, I always felt like that was my superpower, is that I never thought it was about me. It's about us using what we got to bring the story to life right now, because we're doing it right now.
Exactly.
So let's just, whatever we got to do right now to get the most out of this day, right now, that's what I'm committed to. And I hope y'all are with I'm going to do it whether you do it or not. So it don't matter to me. That's what I'm going to do. And I try and simplify it to there. And then hopefully the work and the commitment to the work in that moment speaks for itself. And then I don't have to talk.
Right.
But that's how I feel about it. And that's how I feel about the things. But I also feel like they came out of what it meant to be a Black kid. I understood that they wrote this character, and I understood that the white person that wrote this character, no matter what I thought, no matter how I felt, didn't know anything about being Black, because how could they? And I knew that they had now just handed me this character, and I didn't want my character to suck. And I didn't have any expectation that person would be able to see the world through any person of color's eyes, let alone mine. So I'm not mad at them about that, but nobody was going to go do a rewrite for me.
Right.
And if they did, they weren't going to hire anybody who looked like me to do that job more often than not. So what were my choices? I was already a writer. I could just, it was doing it and having somebody laugh or respond and go, "Oh, I love that," was easier than pitching it. So, I took authorship for so many of my characters. There was a framework that got thrown at me, but I had to take authorship because nobody else was going to do that job. And I'm probably not unique in that sense. I know some actors who just, approach it differently, but I was already a writer. Everybody who hired me knew that already. And most times they encouraged me, but I did not want to, people always say they want you to do something. And then if you do it and people start responding to your stuff more than their stuff, then they're mad at you.
Right.
So that's always a delicate balance. So I always just try to, keep the peace, and, I'm not here to try and embarrass anybody. I'm just trying to bring the character together. So I really do try and be really respectful of writers, because I know how hard the job is. And unless they really push me to do it, I tend not to do it. And I've been blessed. And I believe that's why so much of my stuff always ends up in the final cut, because I try not to make the person feel like an asshole about it. But of course I was going to be able to bring me to life better than you. You don't even know me.
Right.
I mean, you just met me. There's no shade on you at all. It's just, you didn't think about this character in this way. This character was white, and then you guys decided he was Latin. And then I came in, and then you decided it was me. But the author of this character never looked at it through a worldview that's authentic to that character. And so many female actresses have it far worse than me, because often there's a gender and a race thing. So it doesn't matter. You're a white female actress. It's just worse if you're a Black or a Muslim or an Asian female actress, because 9 times out of 10, the author doesn't have any real insight into the culture and is hoping that you will steer them away from things that are problematic, because they're not exactly sure.
That's a good point. That's actually a great segue into my next focal point. You mentioned character authenticity. Now, I talked to a few gamers and content creators, and that's one of the big things that comes up within our conversation, is how when a game developer or creator develops a game and he or she has all of these characters. When they throw in a black character or a character that they say we're going to make this one a black character, how the representation of that character, one, the way they speak, two, how they look, the color, the hair texture. A lot of times, if you are a gamer, you're scrolling through all of the characters and you're trying to pick the one that best represents you through this scenario that you're about to engulf yourself into. Then we get to the black character. Man, that character looks nothing like me, nor does it look like any black person that I think would solidify this role. So let me see if I can go in here and tweak some things. You go in and you tweak the character. You get it tweaked to the best that you can with the resources that are available to you, but it still doesn't fit. That is a major thing as to what you are speaking to. Bringing life to a character that someone else developed, someone else gave you their representation of this particular character, and you're looking at it and you're like, you know what? I don't like the way this character looks or the appearance of this character. And I know that the people that are watching and viewing this, they feel the same way. This word representation is being thrown around a lot. How exactly, taking this from a game perspective to just on the screen, how important is representation to you?
For me, I only exist because of it. So I think that it's an odd conversation to have because I love classical music, but the idea that that's what I must hear because most of the music is classical music is not a reality that you or I or anyone of our listeners knows about because they have a diversity of storytellers coming at them from all these different forms of music. And music is richer because of its diversity, just like so many other forms. However, that's not what we've experienced when you look at genuine representation, when you look at Hollywood films. Sleepy Hollow was successful because of its diversity. It was the most multicultural television show in network history. It was more culturally diverse than Shonda Rhimes shows. It had 2 female black leads who were not subservient to any man. Both had semi-relationships with men, but the men were not of all the same race. Asian, Latin, black, white. That kind of representation, even for disabled people who represent 20%. Amanda Stenberg playing my disabled daughter. Most children of color had never seen themselves disabled. Her not thinking of herself as a victim and her chastising her father and others who looked at her in that way, who saw her wife as somehow tragic because of what her experience was. Her worldview, so entirely unique. But that comes from diverse storytellers. That's what was special about the show. That's why the show is so successful. So what that tells us is that we shouldn't be arguing about what works. And what worked was that those characters felt authentic and that the storytellers that they were coming from had somehow considered them as something more than the black girlfriend or the female lead. That's not what those shows were. That's not how those characters were. So it's critically important that we understand that that's what representation really is. And it has nothing to do with black and white. Diversity is more than black and white. If we're really being honest, disabled people probably have it worse than anyone because they're still living in blackface times. Not only can they not even get into buildings in many cases because they haven't made sure that they were equipped for people who are disabled, they often give their roles to able-bodied actors and then give the able-bodied actor an award for pretending to be disabled. Mm-hmm. Is that not? I'm not saying that I'm not denigrating Tom Hanks, okay? But what I'm saying is that when you wouldn't hire a a person who is, horizontally challenged, but you would hire a normal sized person with quotes around normal and digitally shrink them? I'm sorry. What? There's only Peter Dinklage? Are y'all serious right now? I mean,
Right.
that's absurd when you think about that person was kept from that job, even when they perfectly fit the job, just so you could give it to somebody else. So when we talk about in this black-white context, we don't look at women. We don't look at Native American women. We don't even look at Two-Spirit women. We throw out acronyms, LGBTQ plus S2, but we don't even look at what they mean and how representation looks across those different letters.
Mm-hmm.
How often it's just, they're gay, and the application is they're the gay character, with not a whole lot of specificity beyond that, or even binary or non-binary. I mean, there are so many ways that we can look at how diversity has failed us. I mean, and so in turn, we don't hear those stories. So in turn, we think we know those people. So in turn, they get treated like second-class citizens because we have relegated what real high-end important content is. And that's content with important white people done by important white people. And if it's not done that way, then it's just what the rest of you fools are doing. It isn't really important. And that's been a clear drumbeat of a message for in excess of 25 years, where the screen time, the speaking roles, and all of that broken down somehow fit the same components that we're talking about when we look at representation, diversity, and social inequity. Isn't it weird that the content we put out tends to reflect the same bias? Interesting. Isn't it weird that it was totally okay to smack the crap out of a woman on screen, so much so that the catchphrase for the honeymooners is "to the moon, Alice"? That was
Right.
normalized behavior until we decided that wasn't going to be normalized behavior. And now you see television populated by so many female characters. Yay. And you look at how that also changed attitudes around women. Yay. So why can't you see that for more than white women?
Mm.
So my point remains that these ideas get tossed out, and no one ever boils it down because they're too busy pointing the finger, calling this person thisist and thisist, racist, sexist. I'm like, okay, great. Oh, yay, stop. The guilds are overwhelmingly white and male. And in order to do premium content, you must be a guild member. So isn't the place we start by diversifying the membership of the guild so that those people are eligible to work within the machine? Isn't that
Right.
where it starts? And secondly, if we really want those stories as people of color, and we really are willing to pay for them, then really put your money where your mouth is and create that pool of money, and then finding the storytellers to bring that to life for you to hear those stories. That's not the problem. It's just the access to the finances to do it. So if we could set our apathy aside, we could absolutely get to where we want to go. The problem is, I really do think people are more interested in talking about it than they are doing it. But that's not everybody. There are plenty of people who want to do it. And so I think the beauty of technology is it gives us a way to reach those people and for us to empower each other. That's why I got involved in tech. That's what's always been so exciting about tech. But I think we have to stop with this idea that what we're going to do is parse through diversity under the terms of an extremely broken system. I think we just have to acknowledge that system isn't going to change because by and large, the same people are in charge. I think we just have to acknowledge that that's not their worldview. I think we have to stop yelling at them and calling them all sorts of names because we don't agree with their worldview. And I think that their businesses will suffer because of their worldview, or they will shift their worldview. And as soon as business suffers, trust and believe they will. And if you build something, they'll come buy it because they have the finances to do so. But all of that spells opportunity for storytellers of color who have the opportunity to get their stories told, or storytellers that are just disenfranchised who have interesting perspectives and stories to tell. So, Anne Frank's story is interesting. It's compelling to hear the story of of Nazism through the eyes of a 14-year-old girl hiding beneath the floorboards of a home. What a fascinating story and worldview. What an empowering story and worldview. So I'm really focused on those. And when you look at what's happening to Muslims, when you look at what's happening to so many disenfranchised, with human trafficking on the rise, I want to see more stories about those people breaking free from the chains of oppression. I want to see more stories about people overcoming the trauma that so many other people have suffered. And I believe that those are the stories that can help transform us. And I want to tell those types of stories that connect me with my Brazilian brothers and my African brothers first. I don't mind being connected with the European and my Asian brothers. You know, I'm part Asian, I'm part Native American, I'm clearly of African descent. That's who I am. I'm trying to really connect those pieces because those stories in Brazil about racism sound just like ours. And those stories in South Africa sound just like ours. So, the stories in Nigeria, I could go on. So when I look at what really happened in the islands, that's Asian. There's nobody in the islands that isn't part Black and part Asian because they put us together and assumed we weren't going to mix or cohabitate. They assumed that no biracial children would come out of that. That's not what happened. So, I'm excited to tell those types of stories so that we can get past this slave narrative of Blackness, because the slave narrative of Blackness doesn't even scratch the surface of who we are. And it's shameful that you don't learn that in school. So it's our duty as storytellers to educate others, but first our children to understand that their legacy is not slavery.
And you know what? I truly agree with you with everything that you're saying. It is definitely time for us to change this narrative and this ideology that everything is supposed to be race specific or, as you stated, gender specific or in those areas. We definitely need to be able to portray. And as you stated, the shows that have more diversity, they do a lot better. And the reason is because we get to see us and we get to know about other cultures and the things that we don't get to see on a regular basis. And it is a little bit more inviting. You do feel more comfortable because it's like, hey, especially as a child watching these TV shows. And if you never see anyone that looks like you, it's kind of hard to see yourself in a role to become a writer, to write, to be inspired, to become a writer, to become a producer. And I'm a mother of 3 daughters, and I tell my daughters all the time, you can do anything that you want to. All 3 of my daughters have different abilities, different skills. They're all intelligent. They're all talented. But if my girls, it's not enough of them getting the encouragement from me. I need my girls to be able to see individuals who are in these roles as astronauts. It
takes a tribe.
Man, I'm telling you.
And that tribe is so critically important. My father turned to me when Obama was becoming president, and he said, if he wins, it'll fundamentally change the way every young Black boy thinks, because they'll believe they can be president because they saw it already. Now, I understand why that's a threat to white supremacy. I get it, but everything's a threat to white supremacy.
Yeah, but it's only if you're in that mindset, it's only a threat because you feel like you're losing your power.
It's a threat because you think you're superior. You think you're superior. That's the threat. Everything's a threat to white supremacy because you think you're superior. If you just thought you were human and I were human, it wouldn't be a threat.
It wouldn't. It wouldn't. It would be a level playing field.
That's right. But you don't want a level playing field, and you don't want to work together. You just simply wish to be better. That's what your presentation is. Your presentation is, I'm better, except though that is the rules, and now let me take advantage of you and tell you where you fit in society. Those are the rules as set forth. You wish to debate said rules. I don't see any reason to debate those rules. They seem completely stupid to me. I don't know why you would think that there's some combination of words you're going to put together that's going to make me forget that you're stupid about this. That's never going to happen. So we don't need to talk. We can just agree that you shouldn't be in a leadership role because you teach your own supremacy, you see. And children need to be taught about how they can, as a father of two daughters, I'm fundamentally interested in teaching and making sure they understand how they can be successful, that they have value, that their stories are just as relevant as anyone else's stories, but they have a responsibility as storytellers to tell their stories well. I'm trying to educate them about excellence and about integrity and about those important scruples that so often get lost when we're trying to teach about success. You're trying to teach supremacy. And I don't agree with that. And I'm not going to sit here and argue with your stupid ass. I ain't got no reason to do that. So I'm just going to go around you, and that might offend you. I understand that. And you'll get over it. It'll be okay.
Exactly.
Because I'm not trying to hurt you. I don't wish harm to come to you. I'm sure I love racists. I have plenty of homophobes and stuff that I love. What am I going to say? Like, I don't have those types of people in my family that I vehemently disagree with and who I infuriate by rubbing it in their face because I will not let it die. But that doesn't mean I want something bad to happen to them. So I get that it's complex. I'm not trying to put forth that I wish harm to come to you because you hold some type of ill, some type of ism. It's not a death sentence. I'm not interested in that. But I don't think that the people who I love can be in any position of power either if they hold those type of bigoted views. So neither can yours. These people need to be relegated to a different type of position where you stop their power because they have already made it clear to you that they won't use it accordingly. They won't use it right. So they can't hold those positions. That's just how it is. Doesn't mean they can't bring value to society. They can, but they can't sit in that chair. And that's a totally fine thing, right? I don't have no issue with that. But the idea that what we have to do is suffer through this foolishness because you don't have the gall to go tell your aunt, your uncle, your mama, your cousin that this bigoted thing that they're doing is harmful and hurtful to people, and they should be equitable in their treatment if they really want to talk about the founding fathers. Otherwise, they should go ahead and admit Jefferson's a rapist and say he might have been a brilliant mind, but that brilliant mind was also a very interesting deviant because he liked to rape young black girls. Okay?
Right.
Everybody clear? All right. I'm not diminishing anything else. I'm not diminishing anything. I'm just calling it what it is. All right. There was something going on there. It wasn't all great. Okay. And I think it's important in us and incumbent upon us to say that this behavior was reprehensible. And it's incumbent upon us to say that he failed to live up to the values that he preached. So those values don't mean anything if you can't live up to them. That's an important lesson.
It definitely is. And as you stated, it does take a village, and a village cannot raise a child or change perspective if they are not allowed to speak, if they are not allowed to be seen and execute change of mind, change of bad behavior. And they say a habit is formed if it's done continuously for 30 days. Can you imagine half of the behavior? Well, we're not even going to say half. Everything within the climate that we are in right now. People say it's been 400 years or more, or since slavery. It's a mindset. It's also being comfortable. It's also relinquishing your ability to control is a very powerful thing as well. It's condescending. It is a weight, not against just those people who are in that position to control all types of things, whether it be the government, the film, the tech industry, education, just the financial institutions that we are all affected by. And it's unfair to a certain group of individuals. It's slanted. And what technology has done for us today is it is showing this imbalance. It is showing the ignorance, the willingness to continue to operate in a manner that you think is fair, and that you should continue to be allowed to support and intimidate. But people have eyes. People are witnessing these things that are taking place. And I can't within myself feel that people are comfortable and they are okay with things staying like this even longer. I just can't. I don't want to accept that as a resolution or result, but I can't believe that people are okay with how things are going right now. And with that being said, it's sad that we're still having these conversations. Things should change. Being that you are in the entertainment industry, it's been said times that things would change if Black people would take their talents, their creativity, all of this, because we've influenced our culture. Just our existence has influenced a lot. Music, cooking, just a lot of things, inventions. What would the world look like if we did take that advice and we took ourselves elsewhere and kind of segregated ourselves? From your perspective, would that work? And if so, how would it look?
I don't think that at this stage, segregation is the solution. I think that it's more about how we work together. I think that when I watch birds fly and change direction all at the same time, go in these formations, I always wonder how they're communicating with each other to do that. But how does that work? I mean, all y'all got cell phones? Like, what's going on? I mean, is it telepathy? But whatever it is, I think it reinforces that the natural order of things is cooperation and not competition. And I think that shift in mindset is an important one. And as you said so eloquently, there's a bit of a cult that has been put in place, and it is that system and its behavior that has reinforced so many of the things that we're trying to fight against. So it requires us to put in place a system to deprogram and reteach, right? So I think it's more important for you to get involved in your local community. I think it's more important for you to get involved with what's being taught in schools and voice an opinion about that curriculum. It doesn't need to be the same 7 people every Black History Month. If we got involved and started to talk more seriously about who we should be elevating and what stories everyone should be hearing, that would be nice. I think it's very much about us going to city council meetings. And I think it's about us taking the time to get involved and help people in our immediate vicinity. And that means in areas where people are disenfranchised, that means there are many trauma victims. Those who wish to do good, please go provide the care that those trauma victims need as they are continually re-traumatized and find themselves in the system. Secondly, if you're going to become a person in tech, if you're going to become a prominent coder, if Silicon Valley really is going to get more diverse, we all know that the aptitude for coding is happening around 4th, 5th grade math. That's when you fall in love. And that's when you now need your 10,000 hours and your access to the right resources to get you there. Go into disenfranchised areas, find those kids who have that capacity and give them the resources they need to become $1 million coders, to become doctors and surgeons, and you will have the fix that we already know works. You'll have a lot more doctors that are diverse. So that means you will have doctors to service that community. Not that white doctors can't service that community. It's just that every study known to man clearly points out that for whatever reason, the way the white doctor takes notes on the Black patient is different than the way the white doctor takes notes on the white patient. That's just what the studies tell us very clearly, that somehow the Black doctors are able to give more effective care to Black people. Again, it doesn't mean that white doctors have not delivered effective care. It doesn't mean that at all. But it does mean that the system could use more Black doctors. So it could use, a clear diversification. So I say that to say that I believe that the next steps are local. It's about what you have to do in your own community. And I think that's critically important to not repeating what we've seen before. And lastly, I think we have to get really serious about data. Right now, tech companies are making a lot of money off of other people's data. And the people who control the zeitgeist, whether we choose to acknowledge it or not, happen to be people of color. We control what's hot, we always have, but we don't own our data. So if you're going to be equitable, then we should be compensated for our data. Your data may as well be your DNA. They're the same thing. So if they're going to make money off of our data, we should share in those profits off of the money that they're making off of us. And I believe that that is an equitable way for tech to behave and to also uplift those communities. That's a smart way for them to behave, to create more of a balance. And then you won't have to go in and help as many people because you did the right thing, because all you're doing is jacking people's data. It's a different form of the new slavery. And so I think those things are real things that can happen. So if tech companies really care and they know they don't have lots of people of color within their midst, all of which they know is true, then fine. Then empower people of color by allowing them to receive compensation for your monetization of their data. That is a surefire way. That's something you can do right now. You can and you have enough data to know what that looks like by area code. So that means that the people who are in that area code right now, who are working and are trying to help anti-recidivism, the people that are trying to help young women, the people that are trying to do all the work and have been doing it for the last 15 years and can't get no money from the grant process, but they're just trying to make it work and they're going to help people because if they ain't going to be here for these kids, who's going to be here for these kids? Those people. Great. Give them money. You can do that. I mean, go right ahead. You have that data by area code. So we have ways, I believe, that we can affect real change right now. We need put the pressure and ask the questions and hopefully get those people to agree that that is the equitable thing for them to do rather than spending their social impact dollars, giving it to other companies who parade social impact around, but don't actually help anybody.
That's a great point, a great perspective. We're getting ready to wind down. What I would like to know is if anyone who isn't already following you, where can we follow you? What projects do you have going on? Are there any shout outs that you'd like to, or thank yous, advice that you'd like to give as we come to a close here? This is your opportunity.
At the Orlando Jones is pretty much my tag on social media. They put a fancy blue check mark next to you, so to differentiate you in some way. So if you see that, that's the real one. I know that there are a lot of accounts out there of me. And I guess projects wise, Ethan Hawke did an incredible project that I was really fortunate to be a part of. Ethan is one of my favorite people, as just as a human and also as an actor. It's about the abolitionist, the white abolitionist John Brown, who tried to steal all the guns from the armory and bring an uprising against slavery. It's a story based on that true story on Showtime. It's out in October. Excited to have that come out. John Brown's an incredible part of the American landscape and just a story that people don't often tell. And it's told through the eyes of a 14-year-old black kid who gets emancipated by John Brown, because John Brown was known for, if he showed up somewhere and there were slaves, he would kill all of the slave owners and emancipate the people. So he did that to a young man who he thought was a girl and proceeds to call him a girl for the rest of the show. It's based on James McBride's National Book Award winning book called The Good Lord Bird. So that'll be on Showtime in October. Right now with Sci-Fi and Sci-Fi Wire, we've taken the great debate, which we were doing at all the Comic-Cons, that is generally people like Aisha Tyler and myself and John Barrowman and what have you, debating high and low about all of the nerdiest topics you can imagine. So that's called Sci-Fi's The Great Debate. That's been turned into a television show, and that's airing on Sci-Fi. And then lastly, with my sis, Gabrielle Union, who found herself in a difficult situation with America's Got Talent and its producer Fremantle. I found myself in a similar situation as I was exiting American Gods with the same production company, Fremantle. So she called and said, "Hey, would you like to do LA's Finest?" which is the show that she stars in with Jessica Alba. And I went and played a really, really fun cool character on that show and did several of those episodes with her last season. And LA's Finest will be on Fox and streaming on Spectrum. So those are the places you can see me, if not online. And thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today about hopefully the changes we can make in tech. So any way I can be of assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I don't know, I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Well, I'm honored to have you here with me on the podcast as my special guest. You are welcome back anytime. I appreciate your knowledge. I appreciate all of your research and just you delving in and trying to help educate, bring awareness. And you brought up some things that I didn't know we as individuals could do to help ourselves, or if we're in the position to help someone else. Just that data, that is very interesting to me. And I'd love to look into more on that. But thank you so much for taking time out of your very, very busy schedule, to sit with me and talk to the audience, to the people. And I do hope that I asked you the appropriate lines of questions so that, so that people can, thank you. My goal is to educate and inform, and you've helped me do that today. You and your family, please stay safe during this COVID and just continued success. Don't be quiet, because you got some gems and you got a lot to say, and we need to speak up. It's time to stop being muzzled. It really and truly is. And we have to listen. One of my favorite things to say is to speak with purpose.
Yes.
And that's what we've got to do it.
I do a lot of listening these days. I have 2 little girls. And so they are educating me on a daily basis, in ways that I can't even imagine. So, I feel like I was apathetic for so long because, I talk that game now, but at the end of the day, come on, all through my 20s and 30s, this wasn't what was on my mind. So, I feel like I have a responsibility. I'm trying to live up to the responsibility. I'm trying not to point the finger anywhere but me, really, and just trying to take some personal responsibility for what I can do and just share with people what I'm trying to do, rather than, I just feel like right now there's just a whole lot of people telling people that they're horrible. And, people tend to be what you think they are. We tend to manifest what we believe. So I don't believe that people are horrible, and I'm not interested in a race war. I'm interested in equity. So I really do try and put my purpose behind something that I think can be beneficial to everyone, because I think that's how we get beyond this and how we get to the next level. And we're going to be locked up for 2 more years or more with this pandemic foolishness. So let's come out of it with something good, people.
That's right. Take that personal assessment and be accountable. But it's growth together and perspective, and try to be empathetic. But again,
I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know, right? Thank you so much, and have a good one.
You too.
We've come to the close of another episode of the End User Talk podcast. I hope that what you've heard today will leave you feeling empowered. Thank you for listening, and remember, every day's a training day.